What's a Gen Z stereotype that you think is completely accurate? That they're self-righteous and judgmental. I think it's great that they express morals and values, i.e. Ariana Grande losing over 300k followers for having an affair with the SpongeBob guy. But the way they can be vindictive and rabid to punish others is going to become a problem when they get older. Not to mention, I don't think many of them are old enough to have experienced their first really big fuck-up in life. When that time comes, they'll want far more grace and understanding than they'd extend to anyone else. A lot of self-diagnosing of various mental health issues, depression, and always needing to threaten of killing themselves. Everything is depressing to them. Everything gives them a mental breakdown. Needing to make $30 an hour or more for their hourly job, and all the while constantly calling out, giving up shifts and only really wanting to work maybe 15 hours a week, but still make $5,000 or more a month. Phone obsessed. I'm a 1994 millennial and have never bothered to change a phone background or lock screen. Literally ever. Gen Z views it as a thing of pride, almost like literal personality expression. I view phones as an evolution of the flip phones and therefore never cared to customize it. It's a different perception because my first phone was a shitty keyboard phone with SMS and calling, and Gen Z's was the smartphone. I would say the sense of entitlement is accurate. They really do believe they are entitled to stuff without having to work for it. They seem oblivious to the reality that someone has to do the work to grow your food, build your house, build your phone, build your car, and provide medical care for you. Should these people be forced to work so you can stay home and live your best life? I don't get it. Self-victimization. I'm guilty of it too. Though I try and catch myself. You'll always have hundreds of things to be considered a victim over. Shut up. Deal with it. And goddamn it, stop complaining about it. I quit TikTok 2 years ago because as soon as Gen Z started becoming adults and realizing the world sucks, it's impossible not to find a video of some kid complaining about it. Shut up, please shut up. They grew up around computers, but they aren't terribly computer savvy. And yet they think they are, because they're on social media all the time. However, ask them to do pretty basic things like organize files or manually connect to a network, and they're lost if it doesn't involve an app. Some of them barely know how to type on a regular keyboard, because all they do is text all the time. I'm starting to think they don't know what humor is, and I don't mean like not enjoying offensive and derogatory humor from the past, but even like puns and simple sarcasm. I think it stems from communicating almost entirely in text and through social media. They don't seem to know what a prank is either. It's not harassing and assaulting people on the street. Prefer it that way, and how they're doomed to a life of existential dread as they watch the collapse of global ecosystems that sustain modern life because of the actions and inactions of the boomers. I feel like their tech skills are shit due to how brain-dead computers have gotten the last decade or so. OS are now just like a giant website store. When I was a kid, we could fix a computer. Now they're either working or not, like a light bulb to many people. They believe there's no chance to fix anything. Maybe they're right. It's a sad mentality. Social media addiction and the negative effects thereof. A general lack of interest in pursuing the work and family-focused adulthood that was the cultural ideal for previous generations. The percentage of Gen Z who aspire to a conventional job, home ownership, spouse, kids is much lower relative to their predecessors. Despite the stereotype of being always online, the amount of computer illiteracy, able to cite your sources, being able to use programs like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, being able to use a photocopier or printer, and basic abilities to be able to diagnose and fix problems with your computer. I think the stereotype that Zoomers are absolutely fed up with boomer bullshit and taking no prisoners and calling out their shit is accurate. As Generation X, I did it while simultaneously feeling embarrassed that my generation didn't do more of this or push back harder on them when they went after the millennials. Doomerism and anxiety. Far too many of us, especially those on the younger end, seem to be genuinely believe that the end of the world is just a few years away. It drives me crazy. You can't talk positively about anything without someone chiming in to blow the negatives out of proportion. What makes me feel bad about Gen Z is that when you're walking in common space, sidewalks, hallways, lobbies, they tend not to make eye contact and default to the screen. I grew up greeting and at least acknowledging the presence of others in shared spaces. They dress like small children while being adult, pajama pants, cartoon character sweatshirts, frock hats, etc., then demand to be respected, lashing out unfairly at others. Okay boomer until they themselves get criticized, then scream victimhood. I think Gen Z wants a good work-life balance and aren't willing to play games for their bosses. I've read they quit jobs pretty easily when the situation warrants. I think this is amazing, and we're all going to benefit from their outlook. Relationship to the online experience, excessively moody bitchy, approval-seeking and easily bruised, will conform to mob rule, lack of self-awareness, digitally confrontational, have empathy issues. They overwhelmingly do not know who they are without someone telling them. Without the feedback of social media approval, their identities seem diffuse and tenuous. Doing something for one's own gratification and growth seems alien. Moving back in with their parents after college and no plans to live independently. Not necessarily a negative either. I work with Gen Z who make good money and they could afford an apartment, but prefer to live at home and save up. According to some of the most recent posts on Reddit, they apparently really do have a very weird relationship with sex. Like sex work is real work, but also keep sex out of my action movies. It's strange. A ton of learned helplessness. I worked in higher education admin for a long time, and every year the amount of work that students were willing to do without their hands being held got less and less. Nearly all these complaints have been leveled at every younger generation. Your parents did it to your generation. Their parents did it to them. I think adults forget what it's like being young. You guys live on your phones like zombies, and it's absolutely insane for anyone over 35 to see. And the lack of empathy is staggering. That's been a downward arrow for a while now. They can't read or do basic maths. I work with a fairly large pool of Gen Z fresh out of college, and it's genuinely scary to see that most of them can't read at high school level. Watching TikTok in full volume without earphones and vaping. Some of them do an awkward dance at bus stops whilst recording themselves. That's all I see them doing in public. I do think they are more sensitive even with constructive criticism than prior generations. I find them to be a very inclusive and empathetic group. The lack of social skills, COVID, cell phones, and social media has wrecked a lot of their ability to interact in person. It's painful to watch at times. I think the stereotype of Gen Z being always online is completely accurate. It's hard to deny how obsessed we are with social media and our phones. They type entirely in lowercase. I don't know why it annoys me, but it does. I don't mean short sentences, but like entire essays in lowercase. They depend a lot on their feelings. And you know something good. It's nice to not be some emotionless robot who bottles everything up, always late to work or needing a mental health day. Of course most aren't, but there are enough to make it seem like most. Gen Z doesn't know how to troubleshoot hardware-software problems. They don't use the search bar before asking to help me. Everyone apparently has anxiety 24/7 or other mental health issues or any of the various food intolerances. As a millennial, I can't think of any. At a push maybe that they all like TikTok on their phone. Everything is content, and it's turned you all into the equivalent of children's TV presenters. They hate on millennial fashion, or wanting to dress exactly like we did 15 years ago. They're borderline illiterate and self-diagnose themselves worse than Webwood. Broader willingness to call out things people both deserved and undeserved. They work harder at hardly working than any group of people I've ever seen. They're literally addicted to their mobile devices and most won't recover, wanting to put in the least amount of effort and expect to be rewarded. They shit in my backyard every day and they impregnated my dog. Fundamental lack of respect for those that came before them. They'll respect your pronouns, but not you as a person. According to this thread, Gen Z are just terrible people. Technology addiction and lack of communication skills. I'm older Gen Z 21 and I'd say self-victimization. We easily get offended when someone gets called out. Gen Z is less handy than the generation before it.